Hello everyone, this is Dr. Carper again. We are getting ready to look at Adeimantus' presentation of the problem of justice. Before I dive in, I think we're now on the brink of getting caught up. Again, I'm sorry for all the delays, but I think my understanding of Canvas is finally getting to the point where I'm learning how to use it and all of that. I'm getting some help from one of the contact people here at Fontbonne, and so I hope things are starting to make more sense. As you know, we've got some assignments due here. I put those in the announcements or in the assignments, but I made announcements regarding those. I hope that those assignments are going well and that the material is starting to make sense, that you've seen all the videos thus far. Today I'm going to post 3 videos back to back here. The first one is going to cover Adeimantus' presentation of the problem of justice that comes right after Glaucon's presentation here in Book 2. Then I'm going to I'll stop that, post it, and then I will do the video covering the 2 cities that get constructed in Book 2. Do you know what part I'm talking about? I hope so. I'll cover that material, and then finally, I will do another fairly short, hopefully short video covering the rest of the material in Book 2 about what sort of guardian or ruler we're going to have in the city we're trying to build and how are we going to educate them, particularly regarding stories about the gods. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. All of that's going to get posted today. I am finally getting some help on how to use Canvas, so I think we're rolling along, and I hope you're enjoying all of this. Okay, let's get started. There's a lot to do here. First of all, let's review Glaucon just very quickly. Glaucon, if you remember, has 4 parts to his argument, right? I said that in my previous video. The first part was looking at the different kinds of goods, remember? And there are 3 kinds. Goods in themselves, goods that are both good in themselves and good for other benefits, and then goods that are only good for other benefits but not good in themselves. And if you remember, Glaucon asked the question, what sort of good is justice? Socrates puts it in the middle. Glaucon puts it at the end in that 3rd good, but he seems to want to put it in the first sort of good, if you remember, right? He defines justice as the fear of suffering injustice outweighing the desire to get away with injustice. Remember that? That's his definition. And to test that definition, to test its validity, Glaucon tells 2 stories, right? The first story is the secret ring of Gyges, right, that makes one invisible. And the whole idea of that story seems to be to test our secret desire to get away with injustice. Imagine if we had such a ring. And of course, in a way, we do possess that ring. I forgot to say this in the last video, but we do possess that ring. Each of us has the capacity to lie and deceive and hide from others and do things in secret, right? In a way, if you think about it, each of us possesses the power of invisibility. So that ring, though clearly we don't have an actual ring of power of invisibility, symbolically we do, right? So, there we go. The final story is the story of the just man perceived as unjust, right? And he suffers all of these horrible sufferings as a result, right? He loses all of his friends, he loses his family, loses his job because he's lost his reputation. No one wants to hire him or keep him hired. So once he loses his job, he has no income. He loses all of his possessions. He's finally arrested, thrown in jail. He loses his freedom. Then they torture him, and eventually they execute him in a painful way. And the point there seems to be, at what point would you break and abandon justice? In other words, this story tests our fear of suffering injustice, right? Which, if you remember Glaucon's definition, our fear of suffering injustice outweighs our desire to get away with injustice. And that's the only reason why we have laws and that we obey laws, Glaucon argues. That's not a very flattering picture of human nature, is it? It means human beings are largely pretty weak. We're not moral by nature. We're not just by nature. That's what Glaucon wants to say. If we are, if we are truly just, what Glaucon wants to see is, will we resist using the ring, and will we be able to suffer all the way to the bitter end for the sake of justice, even though we are being treated unjustly? See how all that fits together? So there we have it. That's a good summary of Glaucon's argument. Now we're ready for Adeimantus' argument, okay? And Adeimantus comes at the problem from a different angle. He's looking at the actual stories that people are raised with as children and as young adults, the actual stories they're told about justice, correct? And the first kind of story he talks about are those stories that fathers tell their sons, that parents tell their children, right? Go out there, son, and be good and do just things, and you'll reap a lot of benefits as a result. You'll get a good reputation, people will like you, even the gods will like you, and you will be blessed and you will prosper. So the idea in these stories is, be just, and you will reap a lot of rewards from your justice. Adeimantus is very critical of those. And can you see why? Right? Well, but there's another kind of story that Adeimantus is worried about too. And he spends more time on these stories. These stories tell kind of an opposite view of justice, right? That make justice out to be a very hard thing to do. That doesn't always get the reward or the good reputation. Including stories about the gods and how they treat human beings, right? And so, on page 42, Adeimantus looks at those stories. These are stories that deal with tragedy. You know this English word? Tragedy. Where the gods seem to send bad fates to good people, right? Good people suffer bad fates because the gods are punishing them in some way that does not seem to be entirely just. Good people suffering horribly because of some fate that has befallen them, right? Some set of circumstances, the loss of a son or a daughter, or just any sort of calamity that can come someone's way, right? This is also known as the problem of suffering, right? And here it is. So please pay attention. This is at the heart of Adeimantus' argument, okay? In fact, I'm going to erase these words already. So here we go. Here's what Adeimantus is really getting at in this section of the book. This is why he's worried about justice, okay? If God is all good, and I'm going to abbreviate, okay, because I don't have a lot of room here. If God is all good, given the evidence of suffering and evil, actual evil, that befalls people, that happens to them. Given that that does happen, that happens every day in life, as we know, right? People suffer horribly for something they don't really deserve, right? If God is all good, and that is a trait we normally want to give to God, right, or the gods, given the evidence of suffering and evil, it seems that then God is not all-powerful. Not all-powerful. He's lacking in power. Well, because that's a trait that we normally want to give to the gods as well, correct? That they're all-powerful. They can do anything they want. Or God can do anything he wants. We can reverse it. Or maybe you want to say, if God is all-powerful, given the evidence of suffering and evil, then God is not all good. In other words, it seems like, given the evidence of suffering and evil, God lacks either goodness or power or both, or Adeimantus actually says this too. Maybe the gods don't even exist. Maybe God doesn't even exist. Maybe atheism is true. You know this word, atheism? I bet you do. Atheism says God does not exist. Is that what the problem of suffering, the problem of evil, it really suggests? That maybe God doesn't exist at all. We're just here as part of a cosmic accident. And, bad things just happen by accident. Life is purely random. Maybe that's it. Well, can you see why Adeimantus would be concerned about this with respect to the question of justice? I think it's pretty easy to see, don't you? Right? If God lacks goodness, right, then that means he does not desire to prevent evil. He does not desire to be or to run a world that is fully just. And that doesn't seem to be like God. If God is not all-powerful, then that means he lacks the power to run his universe properly. Does that make sense? That doesn't seem to be like God either, right? It seems like, in other words, what Adeimantus is really saying here is, if the world itself is not just, if God is lacking in justice in some way, lacking in goodness or power or both, or lacking existence altogether, then why should I be just? If the universe is not just and doesn't recognize justice, then why should I be just? Do you see the problem here? Then why should I be just? Why should I be just? Why be just in an unjust world? Injustice seems to get us more than justice, right? Injustice gets us more in life than justice. See, justice is not in our best interest, it seems. It seems, anyway. This is the problem, anyway. But I don't know about you, both Glaucon and Adeimantus later on in Book 2 say, we're really bothered by this, Socrates. Show us that we're wrong. That's what the rest of the book is trying to answer. That's why we're going through this in such detail. What Glaucon and Adeimantus, and to a degree what Thrasymachus argues in Book 1, these are the problems of justice that the rest of the book is trying to solve. Does that sound like a good project to you? Trying to figure out if there really is such a thing as justice. In fact, now we can add that to our list of questions about justice. Remember, we've got a list of questions here now about justice that started at the end of Book 1. Now we can ask the question, does justice even exist? You would think God would want to eliminate all justice, or all suffering, or prevent it at least, right? He would want to. You would also think he would be able to do that. He has the power to eliminate or prevent evil and suffering from happening. But we know evil exists. We know suffering really exists. So something weird is going on here. Again, God seems to lack goodness or power or both, or he doesn't exist at all. This is Adeimantus' major contribution to the problem of justice, okay? Okay. So, Adeimantus wants an account of justice that shows that it really exists. Okay? Let me take a note real quick. One moment. Okay, good. So, well, he makes a couple of other remarks that I want to talk about real quick. Okay? Right in the middle of page 43, there's a line in there where he says, where Adeimantus says, there is no advantage in my being just if I am not also thought just. That is an amazing line. There's no advantage in my being just if I'm not also thought to be just. Glaucon would seem to agree with that, correct? Right? So, in other words, we have this old division once again. I hope I've got room here off to the side. We've got this old division again between appearance and reality. The appearance of justice, Adeimantus is arguing, seems to count for more than actual justice. The reality of justice doesn't seem to count for much. Appearance, in fact, may be reality. Appearance is reality, it almost seems. Wow, that is harsh. That makes life seem to be a lot less meaningful. Does life have meaning? That's what Adeimantus is asking. Right? See what I'm getting at? And so, this is why, and there's another remark he makes in the middle of page 44. Adeimantus says, indeed, if anyone can show that what we have said is false and has adequate knowledge that justice is best, what he feels for unjust people won't be anger, but a large measure of forgiveness. Here's what Adeimantus is really saying. This is an amazing remark that he's making, a comment that he's making. What he's really saying is, if justice were truly real, even if it's suffering horribly, and the unjust person is prospering by being unjust, what the truly just person should feel is not anger at the unjust person, but should feel pity for him instead, because he's unjust. If justice is truly better than injustice, even if justice is suffering horribly and injustice is prospering, justice should pity injustice. Does that make sense? That's what he's saying here. Show me, Socrates, that that's true. That's what Adeimantus is arguing. Adeimantus is giving us the classic problem of evil and suffering, which I actually wrote my dissertation on, just to let you know. In fact, I just gave a talk at a conference this past weekend. That's where I've been the last few days. I was at a philosophy conference all weekend, trying to learn more about the problem of suffering, as well as some other philosophical problems. And then I gave a presentation as well. And it went very well. I learned a lot. And I hope someday you get to go to conferences like that. They're a lot of fun, and you learn a lot as well. So, well, that is the problem of justice, as laid out by Thrasymachus at the end of Book 1, Glaucon at the beginning of Book 2, and now Adeimantus at the beginning of Book 2. The rest of Plato's Republic is trying to respond to these three related problems, or presentations of the problem of justice. Does that make sense? And as you know, Socrates says, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try and answer and respond here, but you're making it really hard. Socrates takes these problems very seriously, doesn't he? He says that at the bottom of page 45 into the middle of page 46. And so I'm going to end this video here. It's only 21 minutes long. That's good. And I'm going to get ready. I'm going to post this and then get ready and make the video about the two cities. Okay? That's what I'm going to do next, because that's where Socrates goes next. He presents two cities, the city of necessity and the city of luxury, right? And he contrasts the two and tries to figure out which one is better, okay? Because we're trying to figure out which is better, justice or injustice. Okay, we're at 22 minutes now. I'm going to end this video, and pretty soon I'm going to make the video about the two cities. Thanks for listening. I hope this helps. See you soon.